Hey, good afternoon, Declaration family. It is Shane here, your online campus pastor, and welcome to what we're calling Epilogue. And really all this is we're just looking to dive a little bit deeper into last week's sermon, and we're going to be doing this each week. And so I actually have with me today Pastor Aaron, and we're just going to dive into a little bit more about his sermon. If you missed it, you can watch it on YouTube. Over the last couple weeks, we've been a part of this series called it's called What If series, and we're just asking a bunch of questions, what if questions. And this week's was actually, what if it's too good to be true? Now, Pastor Aaron, you spoke on this, and one of my favorite things you said was actually a joke, just about the lame beggar. If you, again, go back and watch it, it's pretty funny. So this guy, why don't you tell us this story?
So I'll tell you the story behind the joke. The joke is, it's a true story. I was reading a translation, and I read, and there was a lame beggar, and my brain just switched to, well, I'm sure he was fine at begging, and it made me laugh that I thought about that. It's very sad, and so I made that joke. And then, of course, we ran with it. That's why they told him to pick up his mat and walk, and because he just wasn't very good at what he was. But it's just a terrible joke. So completely just joking. But yeah, so that story is Peter and John walking to the gate called Beautiful, and a man there who is lame, he cannot walk, is asking for money. And that's where Peter looks at him and says, money we don't have, but what we do have, we give to you. And then that's when they say, get up and walk. And so I make the point of, well, that statement is 100% true all the time. Mm-hmm. Whatever we have, that's what we give.
You said, if we have faith, we give out faith. If we have hope, we give out hope. If we have peace, we give out peace. And then you can even go into a different side of things where if we have fear, we give out fear. And then you even pose the question, what is it that we're giving out? What are you giving out? And I think one thing that popped into my head while you were saying all this was, number one, the armor of God. Mm-hmm. Just about, we were talking the other day, and I had told you I'm reading a book right now that's written for kids. It was the only book I had. We just moved, and so all my books are packed away. So I'm reading this book. It's called The Prince Warriors, and it's all about, they go to this other world. It's fine. It's a great book, but it's written by Priscilla Shirer, so get it for your kids. It's great, but it's talking about armor, and so I have the armor of God on my mind already. And so when you start talking about this, I immediately think about the armor of God, and then I think of the fruits of the Spirit, mm-hmm. Which you do go on later to talk about. God coming in, stepping in, and meeting us where we are with immediate mm-hmm. fruits. But number one, I do have a question for you. What are the fruits of the Spirit?
Yeah, I don't know them.
I don't know. I always have to ask Aaron because I just think it's funny. But
I leave one or two out every time. It's not a joke. I should sit down and memorize them, but I don't have them memorized. So I did turn to Galatians 5, so I could name them, but they're right there. So
they're right there, yeah. So I think that here when we're talking about what we have, right, of course, I think, and I'll let you talk more into this, but when we spend time with a friend, right, if I spend time with Aaron, of course, we'll begin talking alike, we'll begin, doing a lot of things alike, and I think that's kind of the same thing with God, right? When we spend more time with God, we begin to look more like God.
Right.
And, in this idea of what we have, right, if we spend time with God, we begin to get these fruits of the Spirit. When we have these fruits of the Spirit, we give out the fruits of the Spirit.
Exactly. Yeah, so what you're describing is 2 Corinthians 3:18, one of my favorite scriptures in the Bible, mm-hmm. Which basically says, we have unveiled face, so that means we can go, we have full access to God at all times. And that we behold him as in a mirror, we reflect him, and that we're being transformed into his image. So essentially what it's saying is, the more that we look at God, the more that we behold God, the more that we will look like him, we'll take on his attributes. And I've said it before that's true about everything. Whatever we look, just like you said, me and you, if we're hanging around each other, we're going to start doing the same things. So the fruit of the Spirit it's exactly that. It is fruit. And I use this example. An apple tree doesn't have to work really hard to create an apple.
Yeah.
The fruit just comes out because that's what it is. And so if we are led by the Spirit, if the Spirit is in us, we're beholding God and we're being led by the Spirit, the fruit of the Spirit will just come out. And so, yeah, 100% of the time, whatever we have, whatever we're beholding will come out, whether that's the fruit of the flesh or the fruit of the Spirit, either one. It will come out in that moment.
And I think just as you were saying that too, of an apple tree, it's not hard for an apple tree to create an apple, right? I reminded me of James, and I was just reading through James, and it talks about taming the tongue, and I think a lot of that's the same, right? What you're around, here in James, he's talking about, out of the same mouth you praise God and you curse people, and like it shouldn't be that way. Of course, James goes on to say that, and he even says, like, can a fig tree bear olives or a grapevine produce figs? I mean, of course not. That's a ridiculous statement.
Right.
And so should the same, what we're around is what we're going to produce and what we're going to look like. And so, if we are, we may go to church, we may participate in church once a week, and that's awesome. But what are we doing the rest of the week to really show?
Right.
I don't want to say where our allegiance is, but essentially where our allegiance is, right? Like, what are we focusing on? Are we in the world more than we're in the Word?
Right.
Which, of course, we're supposed to be in the world, but not of the world, right? But what that looks like and what we're producing. And even when we were talking, I think on Monday, we were talking about faith, and faith without works is, of course, dead. Right. And so, are we of the world? Are we living in the world every day but Sunday, or are we living the way that we're called, and are our tongues praising God, or is it praising the world? Yeah,
exactly. And that's a great point too. Just to hone in on that a little bit more with faith without works is dead. Just a reminder, we are not saved by works. We're saved by grace through faith.
Yeah.
That's in Ephesians 2. Ephesians 2, right after that, goes on to say, let me say it this way. We're saved by grace through faith unto good works. So if we are living by faith, we should have good works.
Yeah.
Right? So if we're stepping out in faith, our actions, our lives should line up with that. To go along with the message from Sunday, we were looking at the reports and what are we giving? What kind of reports are we giving? That's essentially what we're talking about. Is are we moving in faith? Are we walking in faith, and therefore we're giving good reports? Are we walking in faith and therefore our actions are good? Just looking at really when we are walking by the Spirit, we will see the fruit of the Spirit. It does come full circle. We will see the fruit of the Spirit. And let me say this: the fruit of the Spirit in Galatians 5. The fruit of the Spirit is starts in verse 22. Then there are the fruit of the flesh. That's the list you don't want to have coming out. That's in Galatians 5, starting in verse 19. Okay? So I want to say this to everybody. Those, the fruit of the flesh, those are not disqualifications. They don't disqualify us from the love of God. They're just indications. So they're not disqualifications. They are indications. They are indications. Are we walking by the Spirit? Are we walking by faith? Or are we walking by
the flesh?
By the flesh. Yeah. They're indications. So you aren't saved by works. Yeah. You're saved by grace through faith, but you will have good works. And when we have those moments where we don't have good fruit, it's not a disqualification. It's just an indication that at that moment we're focusing on the world, we're focusing on the circumstances, we're focusing on the flesh, and all we have to do is just repent, turn, and focus ourselves back on the Spirit.
That also reminded me, 2 weeks ago we had student takeover, and when Pastor Travis was speaking, he talked about a waterfall. And one thing, the church, Declaration Church, is our namesake verse is Psalms 145:4, which says, and one generation commends the next and declares the mighty acts of God. And just what you're saying too, I don't think it's not necessarily, we don't do good for good's sake, right? Like you said, we're not saved by our deeds. But when you really begin to follow Jesus and look at Jesus and become like Jesus, it overflows like that waterfall. And as it overflows out of us, you do good things not because you're doing good things, but you begin to do good things because it's just overflow.
Right.
You just love people so much
Right.
that you just do good things for them and you serve them the way that, Jesus, of course, serves us. And then that goes down to generation to generation to generation. And I think, with all of that to be said, another thing that, your sermon this week, again, if you did not watch it, please go back and watch it. But you kind of end the sermon or get close to ending the sermon, and you're talking about our purpose, right? And how every person has a specific purpose. So you at home right now, you have a specific purpose. We see in the Bible where it talks about that, where we're all one body, but we may be different parts of the body. However you want to frame that, but we each have a purpose. And in this whole question of what if it's too good to be true, when we look at life and we look at the world around us right now, there's a lot of craziness. There's no point trying to deny it. It's everywhere. You turn on any news channel, you open any social media. Even with good things sprinkled in and out, the world's got a lot of chaos.
Yes.
And I think it's, fair to say that, but I don't think it's necessarily, the world is a broken place, right? And so the world's, I think Pastor John maybe I don't remember, he says it a lot where he talks about, he has a friend who says this, that if you know Jesus, if you're saved, then earth is the only hell you'll ever know. But if you're not saved, then earth is the only heaven you'll ever know, which is a scary thought.
Right.
But all that to be said, every person has a specific purpose, and God has a purpose for you, and he wants this incredible life. It doesn't mean it's going to be what the world standards of a good life. But I think what's cool about that is, you read scripture and you see all these people in prison and all these things happening, but they're full of so much joy. And that's what God is saying here. But when we see this, you said that when we begin to make those steps and we make, to walk in what God's calling us to be and who we're calling to be, and these promises that, over and over and over in scripture, you see that, we can believe in God's promises. We have faith in God's promises because they don't fail. If God says it, it's going to happen.
Right.
And of course, then the enemy comes in, and the enemy tells us that it's too good to be true. God's promises are too good to be true. So why would we believe them? And you end with this kind of challenge, and not really a challenge, but just a question of, when the enemy comes in to say it's too good to be true, of course, are we living that lie, or are we living the truth that it's not too good to be true?
Right.
That God's promises, they are going to come to pass because he is God, and he does love us so much. And you talked about it's time for us, and it's time for us as God's people to begin walking and taking steps into God's calling for us. And basically, just let's see together if when we get there, if God's not going to meet us with immediate fruit of just, the world's crazy.
Right.
And
yeah, so what you're talking about was actually in preparing for this message, I was praying, which is always, when you're preparing a message, that's a decent thing to do.
It's a good thing to do. You should probably pray for it.
Yeah, you should do that a couple times at least. And I was praying about the message, and I point out in the message that the Lord said, "Hey, grab your red pen." And every time he does that, I know he's about to.
It's like when he says "truly, truly," right?
That's right. He's about to download something, and I need to write it down. And this has happened to me 3 or 4 times. I have them all written down, and it's weird, honestly. Yeah. Not weird, it's cool, because I'll write things down that I believe that he gives me, and then over the next 6 months to a year, each time I see these things come to pass. And this was one of those times. In fact, I brought that book. Hang on just a second. It's right here. And these were things that the Lord was telling me about us. And yeah, he's saying now's the time. My favorite part in there is, well, I have 2 favorite parts, but he says, stop waiting. I've been speaking to all of my children about what I want them to do. It's time to just do it. Don't hesitate. Training is over. More training will come as you need it. More equipping will come as you go out, but it won't until you go out and put your hands to the plow. And then at the end, which is what you were referencing, where he says, step into my calling out of obedience, faith, and hope, and see if you don't see immediate fruit in your life.
Yeah.
And I think it's all the fruit that we've talked about, fruit of the Spirit. I think it's the armor of God. I think it's all of these things. And then in this time, he named a few things: provision, restoration of relationships, health, freedom, new relationships, and salvations. And what I took from that,
That's good.
yeah, what I took from that was him saying, look, I've been talking, this is exactly what you were saying a little while ago. We all have purpose. We all have a calling on our life. We've all been made in the image of God, and we need every one of us to see all of God. So we all carry a little piece of him, and in order to see the whole body, we need every piece to be operating as it should. And so he's saying, I've been speaking to all of my children about things that I have called them to do. And they could be small things. They could be big things. They could be, writing a book. They could be just talking to your neighbor. They could be anything.
Yeah.
And he's saying, you've been hesitating for whatever reason. Just step out in obedience, faith, and hope. And when you step out, see if you don't see the immediate fruit in your life of provision, restoration of relationships, health, freedom, new relationships, and salvation. See if your obedience, your faith, and your hope don't lead to provision. Some of us have been praying, God, I need help. This is a tough time. I need some provision. And he's saying, look, just step out in faith. I'm your provider. Just step out. I'll bring provision. He's not talking about being rich. He's talking about providing for your needs. Restoration of relationships, health and freedom. Health, like some of us have health issues.
Yeah.
And he's saying just step out in obedience and faith and hope and see if there's not some health that comes with it. Freedom, new relationships, salvations, that we could step out in a simple act of obedience to anything that he says to do, whether that be writing a book or I keep using that one as an example because you're just kind of isolated.
Aaron gonna write a book.
I've been asked to write a book. It's going fine, probably.
Everything's fine.
It's fine. But I mean, it could be that. It could be just talking to your neighbor. It could be go to work, start talking to your coworkers differently than you have been it could be anything, but just the act of being obedient. Let's take writing a book. Just the act of sitting down to write a book will bring salvations. Maybe the book will, maybe the book won't, but he'll start bringing people to you, and somehow stepping into that obedience, he will start bringing those people to you and downloading exactly what you need to say to them and lead them to him. That to me that's the most baffling thing in the world, that a simple act of obedience, no matter what it is, could potentially lead to someone eternally meeting Jesus.
That's good. It's like the harvest is plentiful.
Yeah.
But the workers are few.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that that kind of wraps down even full circle back to what we have, we give.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
If we truly love people, if we're truly love people the way that we claim, or the way that we want to claim, then why would we not share with everybody that we come in contact with? And because it's just it's a free gift, right? But it's a free gift that, can change lives. Not can, but does.
Right.
Even more than that, one thing that I love too is that, it can change generations of families.
That's so true.
And just, if we truly love people, why would we sit on that?
Yeah.
And just go about our comfortable lives?
Yeah. The example that just popped into my head is just in our day. Think about the person, whoever it was, that ministered to and potentially led Billy Graham to the Lord. Millions of people. Because of one person. We don't know who that is. I don't anyways. Maybe someone does. I'm sure it's written down somewhere. But someone else leads him, and he steps into his calling. It was just one simple act that they were just acting in faith. Millions of people forever in heaven. And who knows? Who knows who we're encouraging at any given moment. Could be the next Billy Graham or whoever.
Paul.
Yeah, that's
Who knows? Could be the next anybody.
That's right.
So it's just one of those things that, when we look back at our lives, are we living as a part of the world, or are we living as Jesus?
Yeah.
And, of course, we all know the answer, right? We're all supposed to be living for Jesus, but what does that look like in real life?
Right.
And how do we really do that? And so, guys, with that, we love you. Thank you so much just for tuning in with us and being a part of this with us. If you have any questions, please, Pastor Aaron works here. You know that. Right. So if you have any questions, write in the comments, send us an email, whatever it is, and we'll get back to you. We'll let you guys know. We love talking with people. And so if you need anything, email us. I know you can email. There's a lot of emails you can email. I know there's.
Right. Just pick one.
Yeah, just pick one. Something@declaration.org is honestly probably an email out there. So, but I know if you need prayer, you can email prayer@declaration.org and just reach out to us, man. We love you guys. And in this crazy time when we can't be in the same building, we need to be able to connect even more. And so let's just use this platform of technology that God has given us, and let's connect and stay together. And so we love you guys. Thank you again for joining in with us, and we will see you very, very soon.
See you
guys
soon.
have a great week.
All right.